So I thought I was happy because I thought I had a user story that only involved hyper knowledge, which is what I'm looking for. I want something that doesn't require upper layers. Do you understand why?
I think I do, but I think first for me, hyper knowledge involves many layers. So when you say it's not a HK user story, you might say it's not a HK root user story, but it's not.
Okay.
So that's why I'm like.
Yeah, if you imagine a claim repository as part of hyper knowledge, of course, and that solves it. But okay, but then don't call it hyper knowledge. I'm talking about these abstractions you call concepts and equivalence classes and interpretations.
Yeah. The topic layer of hyper knowledge. Okay,
yes,
that's
the topic layer of hyper knowledge.
Okay, and now let me rethink it.
Not call that, for me, not to call that an implementation detail. There need to be user stories with something only operating on that layer. Otherwise, it is an implementation detail, and I don't call that a layer, because for me, when I talk in layers, I talk about full stack layers. I talk about layers that are also user facing.
I see what you're saying. Okay, for me, scopes are user facing and scopes are in the root layer. And that's
to which users are they user facing? Because if it's to developers,
to any user.
Okay, so I need to have a scope user story then.
That's
what I'm looking for, because I understand why scopes. I get the concept of scopes, and I'm on board with you there. But for me, again, those are probably somebody accessing the root layer. In my opinion, is going to be a developer implementing an upper layer, and they're going to have to make decisions about which scopes they're interested in. If that upper layer is absent, do you imagine any user-facing thing that only uses the root layer?
Yes, absolutely. In the sense that even if there's no, of course, it depends how we define the layers, but I think so. If I'm dealing with statements, and I won't call them claims because, but still, they're claims in the sense that, it's a statement that this entity has this property, or this entity is this concept is a subclass of this concept, right? This is root. That's a good example. This concept is a more specific case of this concept. There's this distinction. Those are claims in a way.
Those are features, right?
Yeah. Those are?
Those are features. Like, what's the user story of an end user using that feature?
Right. And
only using hyper knowledge.
Yeah. Then
only using the root layer.
Yeah. The root layer. Right? Well, they would, for example, say, I'm proposing this distinction to a community. Like, for example, the notion of here's the community definitions, here's my definitions. So I'm proposing this distinction locally, and I'm submitting it to the community so that it becomes
What is locally and what is a community here?
There's scopes.
Locally, and okay, so those are scopes. And to what user interface am I imagining, or where and when does the user do this?
A user is introducing a distinction.
But where? Where am I? I'm a user. Why am I doing this?
You're doing your own private sense making. You're analyzing a document, for example, and you see this.
But to be clear, analyzing a document is not in the roots.
You're analyzing a document, you see a phrase in the document, you notice that this phrase has interpretations in the collective space. You look at the definition and you think, you know what, in this document, I think they're using a more precise definition. So you will either in your personal scope, or you'll create a document scope and you'll say, in this document, which is a scope, this word is interpreted more specifically, and here's the interpretation in that scope.
So then, okay, I get that. So then you're more talking about global annotation use cases, essentially.
Yeah.
where you can annotate stuff within scopes.
Yes.
And everyone has a private scope and there's a global scope, but you can subscribe to other scopes.
Yes.
Which is an entirely different user story than the one listed, right? Okay.
True.
Because my point was, if you want to do the user story we thought of before in the previous meeting, then I don't think it's a HK user story, especially not if you don't include scoring.
Yeah, I'm not. I agree. Scoring is not part of the. But I'm looking at your story, and I guess I don't understand your story well enough. Problematic. Yeah, problematic. I did say problematic means voting. It means you're looking across scopes and you're looking. I agree. It's not a root one.
Then let's remove it and then let's focus on the annotation one. So as a reader of a media source,
yeah,
I want to view global interpretations of fragments, and we have defined fragments, so we can actually keep that. Well, we are defining fragment. I want to view global interpretations of fragments. So
I would say community interpretation rather than global.
Yeah, and community here is the scope essentially on the root layer. As a reader of a media source, I want to view community interpretations of fragments so that I can determine whether or not I interpret it the same way.
Yeah, or I was going to say so that I can propose a more specific interpretation in a more restricted scope.
Okay, now I'm with you. So yeah, it sounds like this would be like an annotation-based layer. And if that's the case, then I see how that's user-facing, and I can also see how if you have semantically rich annotation with general to specific baked in, then you can somehow have a claim repository using that, where the relations between these two lie becomes a bit problematic. But I see now how it's how you see it as a potential user-facing base layer.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let's leave it at that.
Let's leave it at that. Have a good one.
See you.
See you.